Thanks for joining me, guys. This is day 2 of the 4-day-a-week Building Hercules program I recently put out both on Bootcamp and also want to make freely available to you. This is the first limbs day, so hitting legs and arms. So, limbs, how this works. This day is beginning with a superset that has RDLs, as we are looking at here. And then we have standing calf raises next. So to begin, since we're doing the RDLs, talking, this is a common cue you're going to be hearing on just about every single possible exercise throughout the entire week. Slow and controlled, eccentric is the key here. We're taking things under control. We are not throwing weight around, and we're trying to get as close to failure as is appropriate. For certain particular barbell lifts like this, getting all the way to failure, because that could be potentially a little bit more dangerous. Want to hold a couple bars in reserve, a-okay. For others, though, such as the calves, which this is supersetted with, I do recommend going all the way to failure, potentially even post-failure. Hopefully you were able to get a good example of what type of form I'm looking at for this program would look like. Notice there's not a lot of weight on the bar. We are trying to squeeze out the growth we can from the weight. So here, good example of calves. If you saw the video from the first torso day, day 1 of the program, this is nothing new. You're going to be seeing a lot of calf training trained every day. Recently on this program, you're probably going to be getting sick of watching me train calves, as sick as I am of watching me talk about me training calves. Slow, eccentric, ideally a pause. Funny thing is, I think after this workout, I got new training shoes I began using, and somehow those current shoes I'm wearing disappeared. This was recorded on the 5th of January. It is the 12th of January I'm recording this. I do not know where those shoes are. I don't know if I left them at the gym, if they fell out in my car, which I just cleaned out today. Can't find them. If they fell out in my house, those current shoes, up to this point, they have vanished off the face of the earth. You only get a total of 8 sets of calves for the week. Calves are normally an under-trained muscle, so we are pushing on these suckers. Here for leg press, this is a big one. I've seen a lot of people online put lots of plates on the leg press, and they go through like a quarter of the range of motion or an eighth of the range of motion. We're in the gym to build muscle, and in particular on this program, quads are de-emphasized. By that, I simply mean they have fewer total sets throughout the week. You only have 4 sets of some type of quad movement throughout the week. 2 leg press today, and another 2 squats on the next limb day. All because they are quote-unquote de-emphasized does not mean we are training them easy. We are not holding back. We're going a full range of motion. If you notice, there's no more room for me to really go. My calves are all the way pressed against my thighs, and my knees are almost pressed up against my chest. There's nowhere else for my legs to go. I'm going as deep as I can. I do not have a lot of weight. I've only just recently upgraded to 3 plates per side on the leg press. And also, as I have it put in boost camp, I want these to go to RPE 10. I want you to push to pretty much failure on the leg press. Once again, you only get 4 sets of quads throughout the entire week. All because they're not de-emphasized does not mean I want you to go easy. I want you to die on this leg press. So we're going through a full range of motion. Slow, controlled, eccentric. A pause at the bottom. We are squeezing every bit of this out. Even though quads are one of the least important muscles on this particular program, for how I have the goal set up for this program, does not mean you are going easy on them. And also, if it wasn't within the exercises on boost camp, but normally as a calf variation, I actually prefer to do calves on the leg press. So it would be such as for RDLs, do calves at a heavier weight on the leg press, peel some weight off, and for this next superset, do the leg press. That's my preferred way. That's not how it was readily set up to do it on Boost Camp, so I just put it as another standing leg press, as you saw for the first superset, nothing special here. So because leg press takes so much out of your cardiovascular system, especially going for reps, I recommend going as high as 20. We are supersetting that with something super easy on the cardiovascular system. Wrist curls. Specifically, what I recommend doing, and the variation I am doing, is the stretch wrist curls that I got from Landon at Basement Bodybuilding. Now, there are a couple reasons for this. One, they're unilateral, meaning one side at a time. So you can put effort into training the forearms one at a time, and that extra time while you are getting volume on another part of the body we are trying to build on this program, your cardiovascular system and your quads are recovering to be prepped for another set. So your rest time is not wasted time. Secondly, specifically with the stretched wrist curls, I do not believe Landon necessarily knew the physiology and anatomy of this. He kind of intuitively picked up on the fact that when you have your fingers stretch out for the wrist curl, that your wrist flexors are more stretched. As I had explained to me by an intelligent individual known as my wife, who actually has a little bit of understanding of how some of these muscles and such work. There are 3 sets of flexors within your forearm. The flexors that do this, the flexors that do this, and the flexors that do this. A normal wrist curl is only working these flexors. A stretched wrist curl, like I'm demonstrating in the video, is working all 3 sets of flexors through their full range of motion and letting them get stretched. So there is additional potential for hypertrophy. The really cool part about that is someone like Basement Bodybuilding picked up on that intuitively. I never mentioned all this anatomy and physiology stuff. They just went in a direction and recommended a exercise that I later learned after starting doing it. When I showed the video of it to my wife, she then pointed out, hey, by the way, did you know there are 3 sets of flexors that are all being worked in that motion? So that's the second reason I'm doing this. One, give your cardiovascular system a break so you're prepped and not wasting your time just sitting around. But second, it works the flexors excellent for the forearms. So here we are onto the third superset. This is, we are doing first the abs with the ab roller and then the neck. The reason for this is, just personally for me, out of all the smaller isolation movements, abs are the worst to train because the way you're having to brace makes it tough on recovering your breath. And the neck's just an easy one to throw in. So we're knocking both of those out. With the ab roller, if you notice, I am stopping kind of parallel to where my arms are directly underneath my shoulders. Because if I go under that, once again, my wife pointed out, I'm taking tension off of my abs, but I'm still pushing all the way out to the full stretch with the actual ab roller, letting my ab muscles stretch out, and then even focusing not only on keeping my torso rigid, but even a small amount of spinal flexion with contracting with the abs. Does not make it a very enjoyable experience, but this is a very good job of getting it working. Or you watched the torso one day, first day of the program. You've seen me do hip extension, neck extension, and neck flexion, neck curls. Doing that again. There isn't as much for me to talk about here in this portion, other than the reason I'm recommending the rep range I am is until you've really learned how to have incredibly safe form with neck work, I recommend slightly higher ranges so that way each individual rep is less risky, so you can better be listening to your neck to make sure you're not about to mess yourself up super bad. Lower reps, each individual rep is a higher percentage of how much you can handle, and there's less room for error if you suddenly realize you're doing something wrong. Think about it as filling a jar up with larger rocks versus smaller rocks. If you realize you're doing something wrong, and each time you're filling up with a smaller rock, it takes longer to fill up that jar and reach your critical point if you're filling up with big rocks. Kind of a weird way to put it, but that's why I'm doing higher reps and recommend higher reps for this. I think neck work is important for building a good physique, especially the one I'm targeting with the building Hercules one, but on the flip side, I want us to be safe. So for most things, I recommend going to failure. Neck work, I do not recommend going to failure. And I'll also recommend higher reps so you can better pay attention to the safety of your neck. If you mess your neck up, you are really in a bad spot. I mentioned this on the Torso 1 video. Bring it up again here in case this is your first video. But when going down on the eccentric for the neck flexion, neck curls, what I sometimes do is press down on the plate during the eccentric, but then only use my arms for balance during the concentric. That effectively adds weight for the inset for the eccentric, but doesn't add weight for the concentric. Balances out the strength curve in a particular way that can, my understanding, benefit hypertrophy more. So most of the time, that's likely what I'm doing. That's something that is absolutely not visible on camera. So hopefully what is visible is the fact that I'm making sure to have that slow, controlled eccentric for that good deep stretch. Here we go. Next would be the fourth set, I believe. It is V-bar pushdowns on the cable stack and creature curls. In my case, using the easy bar, whatever. Here, doing a type of standing tricep pushdown. Similar to most movements, early on, my cues are the slow and controlled form, particularly slow and controlled on the eccentric. A little bit more explosive on the concentric is fine. Here, not sure how much I did it on this particular day. We're about to see together. But in the final few reps, to squeeze out another potential eccentric using some type of cheat form and or rest pause to enable you to get that additional concentric to open up another eccentric. I sometimes incorporate. I lifted my arms up more so I could have that pulling my arms down as a motion to get that last extra rep or two. Which means that last extra rep or two is one or two extra eccentrics that are very slow and controlled, even if the concentric was a little explosive. Here we are to the easy curls. I've learned to really love these, which is why you'll notice I use these for both of the limb days. Every other arm variation I only use once, but for preacher curls, I use them for each of the limb days, so twice. So I really like these. The strength curve where it's more difficult at the bottom and how that emphasizes the stretch is tremendous, and the way I'm braced means if I didn't do shoulder work previously, but on other times where I do shoulder work before curls, the way you're tempted to try to lift up and the fatigued shoulders interferes with my ability to push on curls, here being braced completely eliminates that problem for me. And as it gets easier coming up, that means I can squeeze out reps. I can do the struggle, let you see some of these slow reps, but then I can milk out an additional eccentric. At the moment, definitely my favorite biceps movement. I'm having to take a moment to come back to reality after doing them. Most sets of most exercises are like that. I have to take a moment to come back. And then seated easy bar French press or overhead extension, however you want to call it. Anything that does this basic motion where you're somewhat upright, seated or standing, dumbbell or barbell or easy bar, I call all of them a French press. It's both one of my favorite ways to train arms and to make coffee. I don't think I tried to do it on this particular day, but on my next session where I did this movement, I tried to do a cue from basement bodybuilding of keeping the arms more back and flared out, but that hurt my wrists. Here, allowing my arms to track forward more like they are, kept my wrist comfortable. So this is an instance of experimentation to see exactly what fits better. But overall, this is an amazing stretch for helping really push the triceps even more. Where the previous tricep movement was more about the contraction, this movement was more about the stretch. And then finally, reverse curls. Yes, it does work the biceps a little bit more, but it also mixed in with the biceps gets more forearm work, and as I also understand it, the brachialis, which I believe is the muscle underneath the biceps. So it gets a lot of the arm overall, both upper arm and forearm, all together. Using the exact same bar I was already using for the seated French press. So it makes it super convenient equipment-wise to superset these two together. Here we go, last one of the day. The triceps get a third direct movement. So 6 sets of triceps on this day. Basic Skullcrusher, lying overhead, lying extension, whatever you want to call it. Unremarkable at this point. Slow eccentric. You've been seeing me demonstrate this the entire time. We're trying to milk out what little work we get. We're trying to balance out our effort throughout the entire session. We don't have a lot of sets per exercise, so we're trying to milk out every single one that we can. Whether you bring it to your forehead, past your head, whatever, that isn't as important, whatever's comfortable, as long as you are feeling it in your tricep. That is the important portion of this. And the final part of this last superset. So yes, we are doing a pressing movement supersetted with the tricep movement. Because of how shoulder dominant this feels to me, it didn't seem like an issue. Normally I would be using the Smith machine, but in this particular case, someone else was using the Smith machine. He said he had more work. So I thought I'll just set up on the seated press, no big deal. Way less complicated than working in this particular case, because he had way more plates on than I was going to be using. So behind the neck press, you start out light, and you are controlled, especially if you're on the Smith machine. I wasn't today, but otherwise I would be. Feels great. If it doesn't feel great, absolutely swap it out for another movement. That's fine. Another vertical press, get more shoulder work. For me, this feels great, and I recommend if you have the shoulder mobility, using that shoulder mobility will help you keep it. And you start light. Jump in an editor's note, just want to reiterate, starting light on behind the neck movement. My all-time max press is 185 pounds. Haven't tried to push the number up in a while, but here you see in the video I'm doing, what is that, 65 pounds? Start light, it can feel great. Nothing about the movement I would consider worth fear-mongering. So back to the main video. You can still achieve failure, i.e. allowing you to get good hypertrophy with light weights. The light weights means you can safely focus on making sure the joints feel comfortable. For me, this and the neck feels great, so I do it. And because throughout the week I have a regular standing overhead press, I have the AD press, which is a high incline bench press effectively, and then I have the behind the neck press. My shoulders are getting hit through multiple angles, all in a vertical press alone, not even counting the horizontal press variations. So that's why I'm using a behind the neck press for this day to end us off. So even though, yes, we already hit a whole bunch of legs and then we hit some arms, we're doing some extra shoulders to round this off. So hopefully bringing you through this day with me pretty quickly. Don't want to go on too long. I plan on having the overview video at the very end of the entire program. If you have questions about what I did or why I did it, or you feel like I missed something, please let me know in the comments. So hopefully in future videos, I can rectify that, especially in the overall program summary. But otherwise for now, thanks for joining me.